We all know the name John D. Rockefeller, the man who built an empire and became the world's first billionaire. But this isn't just another story about his money. Nope. We're going to dive into something way more interesting, the cold, calculated mindset that powered his rise, a playbook so ruthless and efficient, it's still shaping our world today. Okay, I want you to picture this. It's the 1870s in Cleveland, and you're a pretty successful oil refiner. This tall, quiet guy walks into your office and offers you pennies on the dollar for your entire business. You'd laugh, right? But then he calmly explains that he already owns the railroads you use and the company that makes your barrels. That quote, that was his ultimatum. See, he wasn't there to negotiate. He was just there to inform you that you'd already lost. So when Rockefeller started this campaign in Cleveland, he wasn't exactly in an empty field. He was up against 26 direct competitors. It was a chaotic free-for-all market with everyone fighting to get ahead. And get this, in just 4 months, 4 short months, he had eliminated 22 of them. This wasn't just business. It was a blitzkrieg, a conquest so swift and so total that it earned its own name, the Cleveland Massacre. And that massacre, that was just the opening move in his grand master plan for total domination. But where does a mindset like that even come from? I mean, how does someone become that ruthless? Well, to really understand the man, you have to go all the way back to the boy. So on one side, you've got his dad, Devil Bill, a literal snake oil salesman, a con man who openly bragged about cheating his own sons just to make him sharp. So what did young John do in the face of all that chaos? He didn't rebel. He went in the complete opposite direction. He became obsessed with order and control. He learned early on that the world was a brutal game, and he decided he was going to win it, not with his father's cheap tricks, but with cold, hard numbers. And this is where it all started. At just 16 years old, he created Ledger, a small book where he tracked every single penny. But you got to understand, this was so much more than accounting. This was his entire worldview in a nutshell, a core belief that everything, life, business, you name it, could be measured, controlled, and optimized. This little book with the blueprint for his entire empire. Then something happened that turned his raw ambition into, well, something like a divine mission. It's 1867. He's scheduled to take a train to New York for a critical business meeting. He misses it by just a few minutes. A few hours later, he hears the news. That exact train had plunged off a bridge, killing dozens of people. Now, for most of us, that would just be a terrifying close call. But for Rockefeller, it was a sign. He became absolutely convinced that he was spared by God for a higher purpose, to bring order to the wild, chaotic world of the oil industry. And armed with that conviction, he was about to weaponize the entire system against his rivals. His weapon of choice was a strategy so brilliant and so diabolical, it would be completely illegal today. So this brings up a wild question, right? How did Rockefeller actually create a system where the more successful his competitors were, the richer he got? I mean, think about that for a second. The more oil they sold, the more money flowed into his pockets. Here's how this 3-part trap worked. First, he went to the railroads and promised them something unheard of, a guaranteed 60 carloads of oil every single day. In exchange, he got a huge secret discount, a rebate. But here's the absolute masterstroke, the third step, the drawback. For every single barrel his competitors shipped on that railroad, the railroad had to pay a fee directly to Rockefeller. I'm not kidding. His rivals were literally funding their own destruction. And how did he sleep at night? Well, this quote pretty much sums it up. In his mind, this wasn't immoral. It was just nature. It was business evolution, survival of the fittest, and he was simply accelerating the process. But Rockefeller's dominance wasn't just about these big, shady backroom deals. Oh no. It was also about a fanatical obsession with the smallest, most insignificant seeming details. This is a question he actually asked a worker on his factory floor one day. He was touring a plant, watching men seal 5-gallon cans of kerosene, and he just stopped and focused on this one tiny action. He saw the worker was using 40 drops of solder to seal each can, so he asked him, "Try 39. They tried it, and it worked perfectly. The seal was just as strong. A single drop of solder. It seems like absolutely nothing, right? Well, that one drop of solder saved the company $2,500 in the first year alone. In today's money, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Now, just imagine applying that level of micro-efficiency across the largest company in the world. That was his insurmountable advantage.
So, after building an empire on this foundation of ruthless efficiency, Rockefeller had to face his final and perhaps toughest battle: the fight for his own legacy.
By 1880, the result of his playbook was, well, it was absolute. Standard Oil controlled 90% of the American oil market. He hadn't just won the game, he was the game. But now, he was branded as a public enemy. So he pivoted. He applied that exact same Ledger A logic to giving his fortune away. He didn't just give emotionally, he invested with cold, calculated efficiency. He poured money into projects with the highest possible return for humanity, like founding the University of Chicago and funding the research that helped eradicate hookworm.
And here you can see the two sides of the man, side by side: the immense wealth he built through his monopoly and the unprecedented philanthropy that it funded. How can those two realities even exist in the same person? So, what's the big takeaway from all this? His ultimate legacy is a blueprint that still runs the world today. Every time you see a massive corporation that controls its own supply chain, that optimizes every tiny process, and that relentlessly cuts costs, you are seeing the ghost of John D. Rockefeller at work. And that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Was he a ruthless predator or the greatest philanthropist in history? Maybe the most unsettling truth is that he was both, and that one couldn't have existed without the other. The very same cold, calculating mindset that destroyed his rivals also saved millions of lives. And that uncomfortable legacy is a blueprint that's still building our modern world.